Zura was cold and alone in the cage, her hands tied with metal wire, her feet bare, her eyes empty. Like a broken doll, she did not cry, she did not scream, she only stared at the sky above. The black market was crowded with strange creatures, their voices loud, their faces cruel. They came to buy weapons, slaves, machines, anything that had a price, and today, Zura was one of them. The cage was small, dirty and dark, the floor wet with oil and old blood. The air thick with smoke and rot. The trader who owned her was an alien with 6 eyes and no name. His voice sounded like glass breaking. He pulled the cage to the front and shouted for buyers. Defective, hybrid, for sale, cheap price, strong bones, perfect for parts or food. No one stopped to look except one. Captain Elias stood in the shadows, tall and silent, his coat old and dusty, his face half covered with a mask. He had seen many things in his life, battles in the stars, deals with criminals, death in many forms. But what he saw in the cage made him pause, not because she looked dangerous, but because she looked forgotten, like something once beautiful now broken. He stepped forward slowly. The crowd moved away from him. They knew his kind. Humans were rare in these parts and dangerous. Elias knelt down in front of the cage and looked at her closer. Her skin was pale, not like the aliens. Her eyes were silver with tiny circuits inside. Her neck had a scar shaped like a code mark. He spoke softly. "What is your name?" She did not answer her. Lips moved, but no sound came. The trader laughed. "She has no name, no voice. Nothing. She was left behind in a crashed lab. Shipped 2 moons ago. Worth nothing. I give her to you for a basket of fruit, rotten ones." Even Elias did not speak. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small basket. Inside were old rotten fruit, blackened and soft. He placed them on the table and unlocked the cage himself. The trader smiled. "You are a strange man, human. Why do you want broken things?" Elias looked at Zura and said, "Because sometimes broken things still remember how to shine." He lifted her gently. She did not fight. She did not move. She just blinked. Once, slowly, like waking from a long sleep, Elias carried her to his ship, the Starseeker, and laid her on a clean bed. The lights flickered above her face. She looked around for the first time. Her lips trembled. She whispered, "Thank you," in a voice like a wind chime. Elias sat beside her and said, "Rest. You are safe now." But even as he said the words, he knew it was not true. Nothing was safe, not anymore. He opened his datapad and scanned her vitals. Strange signals came up. Her DNA was mixed, part human, part unknown, part machine. She was something new, something dangerous, or something special. He looked at her again. This girl was not just a slave. She was built or born for a reason. Someone had created her, someone had lost her or thrown her away, and now they would want her back outside. The stars moved quietly. The ship floated in the dark space like a ghost, but in the shadows of the black market, a signal was sent, a message to someone far away. "She has been taken by the human. The code is active again. Find them." Back inside the ship, Zura opened her eyes once more. She saw Elias sitting near the controls, fixing a broken screen. She watched him with curious eyes. Her voice was still weak, but her mind was waking up. She remembered fire and metal voices and pain, and then silence. Remembered running, falling, screaming, then nothing. Now she was here in a warm bed in a quiet ship with a human who looked at her, not with fear or greed, but with something else, something like hope. She closed her eyes and whispered again, "Thank you." But Elias did not hear. He was already looking at the scan again. Numbers flashing across the screen, impossible numbers. He whispered to himself, "What are you in?" The dark corner of the ship, a small red light, blinked once, then again, watching, listening, waiting. And far away in deep space, a voice answered the signal. "Find the girl. Find the ship. Do not let her reach Earth." But they were too late. She was awake now, and her journey had already begun. Zura sat on the soft bed, her small hands gripping the edge, her eyes wide open, watching every light, every sound, every shadow around her. The ship moved through space with a low hum, calm and steady, like a heart still beating after a storm. She had never seen a place like this, not dark, not cold, not filled with pain. This was something new, something strange, something safe. Captain Elias sat across from her, his face quiet, his eyes tired, but sharp, his hands moving across the control panel, fixing wires, checking readings, scanning her again and again. Not because he feared her, but because he needed to understand. She was not like anything he had seen before, and he had seen a lot in his years flying from system to system, escaping wars, trading secrets. Watching stars burn, he looked at the scanner and saw the strange lines again. Her blood was not just blood, it carried signals, codes, pulses like a machine. But warmer, softer, alive. Her bones had fiber inside like armor, but light like clouds. Her skin healed fast, too fast for any normal body. Even her eyes had a strange glow like silver fire behind. Glassy Elias turned to her and spoke, his voice low and careful. Who made you? Zura looked down, her lips moving slow, like learning how to speak again. Her voice still soft, still new. I do not know. I remember metal and voices in pain, and a place with white walls, then the sky, then fire. Elias watched her. He knew the signs. She had been made, not born, built, not raised, designed for something. Maybe war, maybe peace, maybe worse. She was not just a girl. She was a puzzle, and someone out there still wanted to solve her or destroy her. Outside, the stars passed like quiet watchers, cold and far away. But closer than they looked, the ship moved through their light. Untouched, unnoticed, but not for long. Zura stood and walked slowly, touching the wall of the ship, feeling its hum, its life. She stopped near a panel and placed her hand on it. The screen lit up without command, her hand glowing for a moment, with strange patterns. Elias stood quickly. How did you do that? Zura turned. I do not know. It feels like the ship is talking to me, or maybe I am talking to it. Stepped forward and checked the panel. It showed new paths, locked maps, hidden files. The ship was responding to her, as if she was a key, not just a passenger. Something deep inside the ship had opened, and he had not touched anything. He asked, do you feel anything else, anything strange? Zura closed her eyes, her head tilted like listening to wind in a far forest. Yes, I hear voices, not loud, not clear, but they are there, like whispers in metal, like someone calling my name from behind walls. Suddenly alarms rang inside the ship, red lights flashing, warning messages repeating. Unknown signal detected, system breach in progress. Elias jumped to the control deck, hands flying over switches, trying to block the signal, trying to trace it. The ship was under attack, but not by guns, by code. Someone was trying to reach them through Zura, through her mind. She fell to the floor, clutching her head, eyes wide, lips trembling, voices screaming inside her thoughts. They are looking for me. They are close. They are angry. They want to take me back. Elias grabbed the blocker chip and pressed it to her neck. The signal faded slowly. Her breathing calmed. The red lights stopped. The voices went silent, but her face stayed full of fear, full of memory. He sat beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. They are not taking you, I promise. Zura looked at him, tears in her eyes, not made of water, but light, thin, glowing drops that faded before hitting the floor. She whispered again, thank you. That night the ship drifted silent again, but Elias did not sleep. He watched her. He thought of Earth. He thought of the code in her blood and the message hidden in her voice. He thought of why someone would sell a girl like this for rotten fruit, and why fate had put her in his path. Zura dreamed of wires, of hands with no faces, of needles, of stars falling, of fire. Then she saw a boy, a human boy, standing on green grass, looking at her, smiling. She reached for him, but woke up before touching his hand. In another part of the galaxy, a dark ship changed course. Its captain received the signal. Its crew prepared weapons. They knew the hybrid was awake, and with her the key to something buried long ago, something they feared, something they wanted back. Zura sat up, looked at her hand, saw the glow fading, but still there, felt the hum of the ship, felt the whisper in the walls. She knew they were coming, but she also knew something else for the first time in her life. She wanted to run, not to hide, but to choose her own path, her own end, or her own beginning. She was not just a machine, not just a child. She was both, and the universe had just started to notice. The ship floated through the cold of space like a whisper forgotten by the stars. Its metal skin quiet, its engines humming low like a heart deep in sleep. The stars outside blinked like silent watchers, but inside the ship something was changing. Something was waking. Zura lay on the bed, her eyes half closed, her breath soft, her fingers twitching slowly. Her lips moved without sound, her voice Caught in a dream not made of memory, not made of fear, something deeper, something not hers but growing. Louder every second, Captain Elias sat at the console, tired eyes watching the monitor, lines of code blinking, strange patterns, repeating symbols from no language he had ever seen. Not alien, not machine, something new, something alive. The scanner buzzed and stopped, buzzed again, as if confused, as if unsure what it was reading. He looked back at her, saw her eyes flick open, silver light swirling like a storm behind glass. She sat up slowly, her head turning, her face still calm, but her hands shaking. One by one, the lights on the ship dimmed, the air turned colder, the walls began to echo with a faint whisper, not from the engines, not from space, but from her. Zura opened her mouth, no scream, no shout, only numbers, only patterns, a voice like wind passing through wires, soft, sharp, rising. The sound ran across the ship, through every system, through every panel, like it belonged, like it had always been there. Elias stood fast, shouted her name. Zura, can you hear me? What is happening? But she did not answer. Her voice kept flowing, numbers and loops, her eyes unfocused, her hands rising like pulling strings in the air. The ship trembled, not broken, not in danger, but listening. He reached for the blocker chip again, pressed it to her neck. Nothing changed. The signal was not from outside, not from an enemy. It was from her, from something inside her that had been sleeping, something that had just remembered how to speak. Zura blinked once, then twice. Her voice stopped. Her hands fell, her breath returned. She looked at him, eyes wide, full of something new, full of something old. I saw something, she said. It was not a dream. It was not memory. It was a map. A map? Elias asked. Of what? Of Earth, she answered. He froze, stared at her face, at the silver lines forming across her skin like veins of light. He asked, how do you know? Because they are looking for it, she said, and I am the path. Silence fell heavy in the ship. Even the stars outside seemed to hold their breath. Elias turned back to the console, ran the scan again. This time the system opened, new files buried, files locked in her body, files that should not exist, files that showed gates, networks, codes, old Earth tech mixed with something else, something older than machines, older than humans. Zura stood, walked slowly to the main screen, pointed at one star in the sky, small and dim. That is where it starts, she said. That is where they made me, or tried to finish me. I do not know. Elias followed her gaze, watched the star grow brighter on the screen, watched as symbols appeared around it, words he could not read, yet understood. Danger, warning, return. He asked, do you remember who you were before? She shook her head slowly. I do not think I was ever just one thing. I feel like 100 pieces from 100 lives, all stitched together with fire and code. He nodded slowly, looked at the old weapon hidden under the console. His hand brushed against it, then pulled away. He did not want to see her as a weapon, but the universe might not care what he wanted. The ship lights flickered again. A low hum began, not from her, not from the ship, from something outside, something far, but coming fast. A signal, silent but strong, a hunter call. No words, no anger, only intent, only direction. Zura stepped back, her eyes sharp, her hands clenched. They are near, she said. They found the thread, and now they follow it. Elias moved to the controls, locked the signal shield, set a false trail, fired a flare into the void to mislead the hunters. He turned back to her, said, we need to run, and we need to hide, but we also need to know the truth. Zura nodded, her voice calm but firm. I am tired of running. I want to know why I was made. I want to know why I was thrown away. She sat in the co-pilot seat, looked at the stars as if trying to remember their names. Her hands moved slowly over the controls, not trained but natural. The ship responded softly, like it recognized her, like it trusted her more than anyone else. Elias watched her for a long moment, then turned to face the stars ahead. He did not know where this road would end, but he knew it had started for a reason. He had seen war, he had seen machines, he had seen lies dressed as truth, but he had never seen anything like her. Behind them, in a dark corner of the galaxy, the hunters gathered, their signal growing louder, their voices merging with the void. No faces, no names, only a goal: bring her back or burn everything in her path. Zura closed her eyes once more, and the ship moved. Faster than it ever had before, not because of fear, but because the wires had started to sing, and the girl who should not exist had begun to remember who she might become. The stars shifted slowly as the ship glided through the empty path between systems, silent like a ghost drifting between forgotten dreams. Its engines low, its trail hidden, its passengers quiet and watching and waiting for what might come next. Zura sat near the glass window, her hand resting on the metal edge, her eyes fixed on a blue light far away, her mind full of fragments, not memories, not vision, something in between, flashes of color, voices without faces. Symbols burned into her thoughts like marks left by fire and silence. Captain Elias watched her from the command chair, his fingers moving across buttons, checking readings, blocking signals, setting new routes. Always alert, always listening. He had not asked her more questions. Not since the last signal, not since the ship almost opened itself to the void, not since he saw her touch metal and speak in code older than his ancestors. The silence between them was not cold, it was a silence of weight. Like something important was close, something heavy, but still invisible, and it pressed on them like air too thick to breathe. Zura finally spoke, her voice like paper being folded, slow and careful. I remember a room, it had no walls, only light. I was floating or falling, I do not know, and voices were speaking around me, not to me, but about me. They called me the key, they said I was the last one. Elias looked at her, his voice steady, but quiet. The key to what? Zura turned to face him, her silver eyes bright like a storm waiting to break. They said I could open something, something lost, something hidden on Earth, something that does not want to be found. Elias stood slowly, crossed the room, pulled up the scan files again, watched the strange patterns move across the screen, saw the Earth coordinates locked behind codes inside her body like a door with no lock until she arrived, like a signal waiting for the right voice. He asked, did you see what it is? Did they say what you were meant to unlock? Zura closed her eyes again and leaned her head back, her voice soft. I think it is not a place, I think it is a truth, something they buried long ago, something they fear, because if it rises again, everything will change. Outside the window, the stars shifted again, and the light around them began to bend, not because of speed, not because of danger, but because they had entered the edge of a forgotten zone, marked in old maps with red lines and silent warnings, a place no traveler crossed unless they had no choice. Elias knew the stories, a system where ships disappeared, where signals went dark, where echoes stayed behind like ghosts trapped in wires, and now they were inside it because Zura had pointed to a light that did not blink, a light that called her, not with sound, but with knowing. The ship slowed down as they reached the center of the dead zone, a small moon floating alone, covered in metal ruins, broken towers, dead machines, burned sky, but under it something still alive, something breathing without lungs, something old. Zura stood, walked to the center panel, placed her hand once again on the glass. It opened with no code, no key, only her presence, and a new path appeared on the screen, not to Earth, not to a planet, but to a station hidden inside the moon itself. A secret lab marked with one symbol, a human eye crossed with a wire. Elias stared at the symbol. He had seen it once long ago, in a war, on a file that was erased from records, a project that never ended, but never began, something the old governments had buried, and now here it was again, glowing on his screen. Unlocked by a girl who should not exist. Zura spoke again, her voice calm. I was not made to destroy. I was made to remember, but they feared that I would tell, and so they broke me and sold me and forgot me. He looked at her and saw not a child, not a weapon, not a tool. He saw someone lost, someone used, someone ready to be more than what they were built to be. She turned to him and asked, will you go with me even if it means no way back? He nodded without words, without fear, because in her eyes he saw something the universe had lost long ago, something older than stars and faster than machines. He saw choice, he saw will. The ship moved again toward the dead moon, toward the secret below its skin, and as it did, something inside Zura shifted. Her skin glowed softly, her breath sensed with the pulse of the engines, and a low hum began to rise from the walls. Not sound, not noise, a song. And across the stars in the dark rooms of those who had created her alarms, lit up screens blinked red. Hands moved fast, orders were given, ships were launched, for they knew the key was turning and the lock had started to crack. But they were too late. Zura was awake, and the truth was no longer hidden behind code and silence. The key was reaching the door, and it would open whether they liked it or not. The ship drifted above the moon like a forgotten feather floating between light and dark. Its body cold, its trail hidden, its voice quiet, as if holding a breath, waiting for what would rise from the ruins below. The stars above watched without blinking, and the silence inside the ship grew thicker like the air before a storm. Zura stood near the main screen, her fingers pressed against the cold glass, her silver eyes locked on the spinning structure beneath them. The lab was there, hidden inside the metal mountain below, surrounded by broken towers and fields of old machines, twisted like bones in the dust, machines that once walked, machines that once spoke, machines now sleeping forever. Captain Elias checked the readings again, every signal twisted, every scan blurred, like something was bending the data, like the moon itself was trying to hide its truth. He tried a deeper scan, and the ship pushed back with static, as if the system itself feared what was under its surface. Zura whispered a single word, not from memory, not from thought, just from something inside her, something old. Valtelius turned to her and asked, "What is inside?" Zura shook her head, not knowing, not guessing, only feeling like the answer was not hers, yet only waiting like a shadow behind a door not yet open. They prepared the shuttle in silence, loaded supplies, weapons, scanners, but not hope, because hope had no place in missions like this. Only will, only purpose, only choice. Zura stepped inside first. The doors closed behind them, and the shuttle dropped like a stone wrapped in light toward the broken world below. The wind there was sharp, the ground cracked, the sky above was a mix of red and gray and gold. But there was no sun, only light from machines buried under the dirt and death. They walked through rusted gates, past the bones of metal giants, past towers that leaned like tired men waiting to fall, and soon they reached it, the door. The vault, it stood tall and smooth, untouched by time, no cracks, no rust, only one mark in the center, the same mark that glowed on Zura's hand when she reached for it. The door opened without sound, and the air inside was still and thick, like breath held for 1,000 years. They stepped into the darkness, and the lights came on by themselves, soft and gold, showing walls filled with screens, filled with eyes, filled with records of faces long gone and names long erased. Zura walked ahead, guided not by sight, not by memory, but by the pull in her blood, the code in her bones, the voice inside her chest that now spoke louder with every step. She turned down a hall and stopped in front of a glass tank, and inside it was a shape like hers, smaller, sleeping with wires in its head and chest and hands. Elias looked at the tank and then at her, asked, "Is that another one of you?" Zura said no, that was the first. They screens around them lit up one by one. Voices filled the hall, voices not human, not machine, something in between, records of experiments, records of fear, records of power, and a name repeated in every file: Project Echo, the last hope of an old world, the final breath before silence. And then the walls shook, not from machines, not from collapse, but from arrival. Elias checked the scanner, saw movement above them, not one, not two, more than 10 ships coming fast. No ID, no flags, only blank signals, only black engines and red trails. The shadows had followed them. Zura turned quickly, her eyes glowing brighter, her voice sharp. "We have to go. They found me, no. They followed me, no. They were always coming. They ran back through the vault, grabbed what they could, files, chips, samples, whatever might explain her past, whatever might protect her future." But time was thin, and the ground was already shaking with the first strike. Outside, the sky burned as black ships rained down, silent and deadly. Soldiers in dark suits moved through the ruin, scanning, hunting. No words, no emotion, only command, only mission, only remove the key before she opens the gate. Elias and Zura reached the shuttle just as the first shots fired. The shields held barely, the engines roared, and the ground cracked open below them, showing a deep core glowing with light, not fire, not lava, but pure energy, like the heart of a sun held In a cage, Zura looked down at it, and for a moment her voice left her, her eyes filled with light and tears. Something inside her recognized the power, something inside her called it home, but she turned away because the time had not come, not yet. The shuttle rose fast, dodging fire, climbing through smoke and ash. The black ships chased them, but the Starseeker answered the call, fired back, blocked paths, opened gates, and soon they escaped, the sky left behind burning and broken, but not defeated back. On the ship, Zura placed the chip inside the system, and the screens opened wide, showing maps, codes, names of places on Earth long buried, long denied, and one phrase repeated over and over in soft white letters: if the key remembers, the gate will open. Elias sat beside her, his voice low. What happens if it opens? Zura answered without fear, without doubt. Then they will come, and we must be ready. The stars outside no longer felt cold. They burned like silent warnings spread across the black sky, watching the ship as it moved through the void, slow and steady like a breath held for too long. The shadows behind them had not followed, but Elias knew that silence did not mean safety. Silence often came before the storm. Zura sat in the corner of the ship, wrapped in a blanket, not for warmth, but for memory. Her hands held the chip they had taken from the vault. Her fingers moved across it like she was reading more than touching, and her eyes stayed on the screen in front of her, a screen that now whispered in colors and patterns and shapes that were not made for human eyes. Captain Elias stood near the command console, watching her, not with fear, not with anger, but with a question still burning inside him. A question without shape, a question that had no easy answer. He asked her again, "What are you?" Zura looked up slowly, her voice calm and soft like the surface of a deep ocean. "I am not sure, but I am not just what they made. I am not only wires and code. I feel things. I see things that were not put into me. I dream of places I have never been. I cry when I do not understand why." She turned the screen toward him, and the image changed. It showed Earth not as it was now, but as it had been before. The skies were clear, the oceans full, the cities glowing with peace, and then came the red line spreading like fire across the world, and then silence again, and then a new face, a face that looked like hers. Elias stared at the screen, then looked back at her. "Are you a copy of someone? Are you a weapon they lost, or are you the first of something?" Zura said, "I do not know, but I was not made to destroy, at least not at first. I was made to remember, to carry something. They wanted to hide something too, heavy for words, something they feared, because it could change the way people think, the way they live, the way they trust." Ship trembled once, not from outside, not from an enemy, but from within, from the vault she had unlocked, from the signal, now growing stronger inside her, from the power that was waking slowly like a sleeping storm, stretching for the first time in years. Elias turned away, opened a hidden panel, pulled out a device no larger than his hand, black and smooth and cold. He held it like a question, like a choice, like a last step. He said, "This is a failsafe, something given to me long ago. A way to shut down anything too dangerous, too unknown, too close to the truth. I have never used it, but they told me if I ever found something like you, I would have to press this." Zura looked at the device, her voice did not shake. "If you press it, I understand. If you believe I am more danger than hope, then you must choose." Elias looked at her, then looked at the stars, then closed the device and placed it back into the panel quietly and carefully. Without another word, the ship reached Earth's edge, the planet glowing below, blue and green and gold, but darker now than before, not from clouds, not from night, but from the weight of what slept below it. The system warned them before entering. Multiple ships detected multiple defense layers, activated unknown protocols running. Someone on Earth already knew they were coming. Someone had been waiting. Zura stood beside Elias, her eyes still glowing, her hands open, not in fear, not in fight, but in readiness. She said, "They will try to stop me, not because they hate me, but because they fear what I carry. They fear that I will speak and others will listen, and then everything they built on silence will fall." The ship moved into orbit, signals flying across frequencies. Some warning, some asking, some begging them to turn around, but they kept moving closer to the old city near the mountain where the last gate was hidden, the gate that had been sealed before her birth, the gate that now pulsed because she had Arrived, the defense systems fired, but stopped just before contact. Zura reached her hand out, and the missiles turned into dust. The turrets shut down, the shields dropped, not from power, not from code, but from recognition. The world itself remembered her, even if the people did not. They landed in silence. No army waited, only a voice through the wind. A voice filled with age, filled with pain, filled with knowing. It said, "We told them one day you would come. We told them the lock would break, and now the key has turned." Elias stepped out first, saw the gate rising from the earth like a great machine, breathing after 1,000 years, silent gears, now waking, dust falling like rain, and inside the light was not red, was not white, was something else, something alive. Zura stepped forward. The light reached for her, touched her skin without burning, without fear, without command, and her body rose slightly from the ground. Her eyes closed, her voice sang without sound, and the gate opened without force. Far above the planet, in the deepest dark, the ones who built her, the ones who broke her, the ones who sold her for rotten fruit, saw the gate open, and they began to move because they knew the choice had been made. Not weapon, not child, something more, and it was already too late to stop her. The light from the gate did not shine like the sun. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and deep and full of memory. It spread across the broken stones, across the mountain walls, across the sky, like a message too old for words, too big for sound. Zura stood inside the light, her body still, her breath calm, her arms raised like she was listening, not to voices, not to commands, but to the truth itself. The light wrapped around her gently, not like fire, not like power, but like a mother's touch, something ancient, something patient, something waiting for her return. Captain Elias watched from the edge of the platform, his heart heavy, his mind racing, his hands ready to pull her back. If she fell forward, if she cried out, if she needed him, but she did not move, not away, not forward, only deeper into the light, as if becoming a part of it, as if remembering what it meant to be whole above them. In the sky, ships moved like shadows, wings of metal, teeth of flame, each one silent, but full of purpose, full of fear, full of the same mission. Erase the key, erase the memory, erase the light before it speaks, before it spreads, before the world remembers what it forgot. The earth below felt it too, not with sound, not with quake, but with silence, sudden and full of weight. People stopped mid-step, turned their faces to the sky. Machines slowed, animals froze, screens blinked blank, and all across the world a single thought moved like a wave. Something is waking. Something once lost is coming back. Zura opened her eyes inside the gate, saw not stone, not tech, not walls, but sky, a sky full of names and moments and faces, not hers but connected to her, like roots in the same ground, like sparks from the same fire. She saw children laughing, cities shining, hands reach in for hands, without hate, without greed. She saw what earth had been and what it could be again. Voice of the gate spoke not with sound, but through feeling, through memory, through the warmth in her chest. It said, "You are the keeper of what they tried to bury," not to punish them, not to rule them, but to remind them of who they were before the noise, before the war, before they turned light into silence. Then the ships fired, the sky cracked with heat trails, and metal storms came rushing toward the mountain. Every missile, every pulse, every scream of war aimed at one girl standing in the light, one girl holding a truth they did not want to hear. Elias shouted her name, ran forward, ready to shield her, ready to fall beside her. But Zura lifted her hand, not with force, not with rage, just with knowing, and the missiles stopped midair, turned gray, turned soft, turned into petals that fell like snow across the earth. Ships paused, not understanding, not prepared for peace, not trained for grace. Their systems scanned and scanned again, but found no weapon, no shield, no threat, only her. And yet she stood against all of them, and they began to fall back one by one, like children who had shouted but forgotten. When Elias reached her side, his voice breaking, "What are you now? What happens if you go into the gate?" Zura smiled, not like a soldier, not like a machine, but like a girl who had found her place. She said, "I am not going. I am staying because I am not just a key. I am a bridge, and The gate is not just an end, it is a beginning, and it cannot open from the other side, only from here, only from Earth. She turned and placed her hand on his chest, her eyes soft, full of light, full of goodbye. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for choosing me when I had no voice. Elias tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He watched as the light moved through her, like a song, like a story, like a seed finding its soil, and slowly her form began to fade, not in pain, not in death, but in purpose, her outline glowing, her breath becoming wind, her name becoming echo. The gate closed gently behind her, not with noise, not with fire, but with silence, like the end of a lullaby. And all around them, the sky began to clear, the world began to breathe. The memory returned, not like a storm, but like morning. Years past, people spoke of a signal once heard in the sky, of a girl who stopped a war without lifting a weapon, of a gate that no longer opened, but pulsed like a heart beneath the earth, a reminder that truth once walked among them and chose not to conquer, but to healing. A small village near a quiet mountain. A child drew pictures in the dirt, silver eyes, circuits on skin. A girl standing in light. The elders asked, "Who is that?" And the child smiled and said, "I do not know her name, but I think she saved us." The wind carried that name even if no one remembered it, and high above the clouds, in a ship that no longer ran on fuel or code, but on memory and hope, Captain Elias looked toward the stars and whispered the same name one more time, Zura. Because sometimes they sell you for rotten fruit, but someone somewhere still sees your worth.